Welcome to All Things Food. I'm John Woods, and this is the channel where we not only love to cook, but we cook to love. And I'm doubly, triply excited today because I'm going to share with you how to make a 5-star restaurant quality steak. This thing is not only beautiful, it's elegant, and it's most delicious. So let's go ahead and get started. The star of the show is the peppercorn. We have black peppercorn, and this is like a assorted medley of peppercorn. Just get you 2 Ziploc bags. Well, that one's for an outer layer of protection. Stick them in there and get you a kitchen mallet, a heavy skillet, just a hammer out of your garage, and we're gonna pound these. You wanna get them fairly well crushed, but just don't get them too pulverized. And I'll take this fine sifter here. I wanna get out all that small pepper, the small flakes of pepper there. I don't want these to be on my steak because if anything burns, those will have a tendency to burn. So you can see I'm gonna sift this, sifting all that out, and look at all that fine pepper right there. These are green peppercorns, and I think they're just a vital part of the dish when you make the sauce. And I like to have about a teaspoon or so per steak. And I put them in a little container like this, and I put just a tad of cognac and let them marinate in the cognac, which brings up the next ingredient right here, and that's cognac. Now, here's some substitutes. You know, cognac can be very expensive, and you probably don't just have this in your cabinet. Get some inexpensive brandy from the store, or you can also, I've seen some people use a port wine. You're gonna cook out the alcohol in the process of cooking the sauce, so you're not gonna really have any alcohol, so this is a kids-friendly meal. I always like to have a shallot, and I cut that up pretty fine, and we're gonna put that into the sauce. So get you a shallot. If you don't have shallots, you can take an onion, a white onion, yellow onion, and just dice it up real fine. Of course, we have our garlic we're gonna put into our sauce. Then when we season our steaks, this is real critical. We want to use a coarse salt, like a Mediterranean sea salt, diamond kosher salt, or I have here what's called fleur de sel, the flower of salt. And I'm going to use, it's a good finishing salt. And if you're going to order from Amazon those peppercorns, go ahead and order you a small container of fleur de sel and keep that in your kitchen pantry, because you're going to use this for a lot of things once you understand how to use this particular kind of salt. Heavy whipping cream. You need heavy whipping cream for your sauce. Then we're also going to use a high smoke point oil. When we sear our steak in the skillet, we want an oil that's going to withstand a high temperature. And I always like to use the avocado oil. That's what I keep as a standby. But what I'm going to use today is actually very interesting, and I make this myself with beef scraps, fat from the beef. I made my own beef tallow, and I'm going to use beef tallow today instead of the oil, because this really gives an extra dimension of flavor. We're gonna have butter, some chilled butter, and you want this to be chilled. You don't want to be room temperature or softened, because we're gonna put that in to finish off our sauce to give it that beautiful velvety look. So those are the ingredients, but then there's the star of the show, of course, and that's none other than our steak. Traditionally, when you make this dish, you use a beef tenderloin, and that's what I have here. And I try not to use a piece of meat that's more than an 1.5 inches thick when I make this dish. I want everyone to be able to make this beautiful, elegant dish. So those are some options that you have. And so we're gonna go ahead and get started and start cooking this steak. All right, this is the exciting moment here. We're gonna season our steaks, and I'm gonna tell you how I like to do it. The first thing I do is I'll take a paper towel and I'll dry the steaks off. Because moisture is an enemy of anything when we put it into a fryer. We don't want to steam our meat, we want it to cook, and we don't want that moisture on there. So always dry off your meat, whether it's fish or steak or whatever you're doing. If you want that good Maillard reaction, that good crust to develop on it, get a paper towel, take a minute and dry it off. So these steaks are totally dry. I pre-brined this thing. I dry brined it in the refrigerator overnight. So what I did is I took my salt that I was going to use, my coarse salt, and I seasoned it really well. Remember, you're going to lose about 20% of your seasoning in cooking. And I seasoned it on all sides like I'm going to do this one. So I seasoned it on all sides, and I stuck it in the refrigerator on a wire rack and let it dry brine overnight. So what happens is this. You say, well, that salt's going to draw out moisture. It does, but by the process of osmosis, all that moisture goes back into the steak, carrying that salt. So when you cook this steak, and I do this with every steak I cook, the salt flavor is not only going to be on the surface like it is with a lot of steaks if we just cook it, but it's going to permeate all the way through the steak, and that is a real game changer whenever you're cooking this dish or any other kind of dish. To have that dry brined steak is just absolutely unbelievable, the flavor it's going to develop for you. All right, we salted the steak. It's good and seasoned, and what we want to do now is put our peppercorns on it. This is peppercorn steak or pepper steak, and we've crushed those peppers already. So I'm going to take and put my steak, press my steak down into those peppercorns, and I'm going to put peppercorns on both sides of my steak today. I want it well coated. Now, you don't have to put peppercorns on both sides of the steak. You can just do one side, but keep in mind, if you just do the one side, when you put this in the skillet, this will be your presentation side. You want that side to be down in the skillet first, so you'll get that nice crust built onto it. And also, when you put it into your skillet, when we stick it in the oven, we're going to put that side down as well, if you just do one side. But what happens when you roast these peppers in the oven or in the skillet, they're going to take on a milder, much milder taste, so it's not going to be a real strong peppery taste whenever you cook this steak. All right, we're going to use a heavy skillet. Now, you don't want to use one of those Teflon coated or one of those non-stick skillets for this, because we're going to be cooking at a high temperature. I'm using my stainless steel because I just think to me, it works out very well because I can see everything that's going on with my sauce. There are a couple things you need to do. First of all, get your skillet hot before you add your oil. So we're going to bring this up to about a medium heat. I want that skillet to be about 375 degrees. And if you have an infrared thermometer, you can check the temperature. I've done this so many times, I kind of know when it's ready. And a good test that you've seen me do is the mercury ball test. I'll heat that up and I'll drop a little bit of water in there. And if the water turns to steam, it's not ready. But if it turns into like a mercury ball, you know how a little mercury ball on a thermometer, and it'll roll around, that's when I know my skillet's ready. Then I kind of monitor my heat from there. Now, once the skillet's hot, I put my fat in, and I let my fat get hot before I put the steak in. We're just about there. I'm gonna go ahead and put in my beef tallow. Good tablespoon of that. I want to coat the entire surface. You hear that sizzle? I'm gonna turn my heat down just a little bit. I can always turn it back up. So when I put this steak in here, I should hear it sizzle. If it doesn't sizzle, my skillet and my oil is not hot enough, but I'm pretty comfortable. In fact, I'm going to just put one of the sides in here. We're going to go ahead and cook those sides first, and I'm hearing the sizzle right now. And don't worry about those peppercorns falling off, because that's going to be really good. They're going to roast, and that's going to go into your sauce. It's going to taste really, really good. So I'm going to let this cook about 2 minutes on this side. I'm going to check it now. If your meat sticks to the skillet, do not try to lift it up and tear it loose. You need to let it continue to cook until the protein releases. And then when the protein is ready and released, it's time to flip. And don't have the nervous habit of standing here and moving the meat around, trying to do something. Let the meat do its thing. Let it cook all by itself without any interference from any outside sources. While we're searing our steak, I've got my oven on 450 degrees. Now, temperature ranges anywhere from about 350 to 500. And I'm not going to tell you at which temperature to cook your steak, because more experienced people will probably cook it up 450 or 500 degrees. If you're less experienced, if this is your first time, I would urge you to cook it down at about 350 degrees so you can monitor it. You say, well, how long do I cook it? Well, I don't know, because I don't know your temperature. I don't know the thickness of your steak. I don't know how hot or cold, if you temper the steak before you cooked it. So there are a lot of variables, and I can't tell you how long. You just need to monitor. I think we're there. We got the crust on it that we want. Let me go ahead and check the internal temperature of this. Hopefully it's about 90 degrees. Somewhere right in there. 70 degrees, that's good. That's probably even better. And what I do, right now, I've got my oven on 450 degrees. Turn this off. And I'm going to take the steak. I've got a sheet pan in there with a wire rack on it, and I'm going to put the steak on that wire rack. So it's at 70 degrees. We got to get it up 50 more degrees to reach the 120 that I desire today. So if I put it in for 3 minutes, I'm going to check the temperature and see how far up it came, 10, 20 degrees. and then I'll calculate out about how much longer it's going to take to get it to 120. So we're going to go ahead and stick that inside, turn my heat off there. What we're going to do now, while we got our timer set for about 3 minutes, and we'll come back and check that, we're going to go ahead and start our sauce. The skillet's still hot. I'm going to turn it on to a medium heat here. We're going to throw our shallots in, still hearing the sizzle. We're going to cook those until they become tender. In a second after those cook a minute, I'll throw my garlic in here. We don't want that to burn. Now what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn this heat off and I'm going to pour in my cognac. Now this, you got to be very careful doing this, so do this very slowly. We're going to deglaze that pan some. I turn that flame off because I don't want that cognac to hit that flame and flame up. Now what I'm going to do, very carefully again, flambe. Always keep a lid by in case it gets out of hand. You can put it back on there in case you have a little fire. So we're going to flambe that, and we're actually burning out all the alcohol. What we're doing here. Turn my heat back there to about a medium. I'm going to pour in a beef stock, about a cup or so, not much. You can pour in chicken stock if you want to. I like a beef stock. And I'm going to bring this back up to a boil. When it comes back up to a boil, we'll go ahead and add those green peppercorns in there now in the cognac so that can cook on out. Just bring that up to a boil. Looks like we went up about 15 degrees, so we're good. We're going to go another 3 minutes. Hey Siri, set timer for 3 minutes. We'll check it again. We don't want to overcook that steak. That would be horrible, absolutely horrible. So I brought that to a boil. I'm going to slowly pour in my cream, about 1 cup of cream. So that was 1/3 a cup of cognac. Use your whisk just to keep it all stirred together. So we're going to bring that to a boil, and we're going to cook this until it thickens up, and I'll show you just a minute what it should look like. All right, it's been another 3 minutes. We're going to check this steak and see how we're coming along here. Boy, it looks absolutely tremendous. Right at 110, so we don't want this to go much longer. We're going to set that timer for about, in fact, I'm going to stick that in there. I'm going to turn my oven off. Hey Siri, set timer for 2 minutes, and we'll come back and check the steak. It should be ready. We'll pull it out and let it rest. Cooking my sauce over here. Thank you, Siri. It's getting nice and thick. I'm going to turn that down a little bit. I don't want to scorch it. Our sauce is really taking shape. I can already tell how it's thickening up. We want it to be thick enough so when we stick this spoon in there, it'll nap to the spoon. It won't just come off like that. So we got a little ways to go here. All right, there's our timer, another 2 minutes. It's been in the oven there. We're going to pull it out here and check it. We got an internal temperature perfect right at 120, right there at 122. So I'm good with that. All those juices will flow back into the middle, so we're just going to let it rest there and do its thing for a while. We don't want to forget the all-important point here, though. We want to get our butter out of the refrigerator, our chilled butter, because we're going to work in about 3 tablespoons of this. And I'm going to turn my heat completely off at this point. I'm going to put this butter in here 1 tablespoon at a time and whisk it into this dish. Just work it all the way around. And this is going to give us not only a rich taste to this dish, but it's going to give us that velvety sheen. And you can see that already right there, how beautiful the sheen is on that. All right, butter's melted. Take our steak. That nice little crust on it right there. 120 degrees in the middle. You may want to cook yours a little more. Some people may want to even cook it less. Whatever you want to do, you do it. And I guarantee this is going to be so delicious. You can't put too much sauce on that steak. Your friends are going to love you. Your family's going to love you. Everyone's going to love you. You're going to love yourself for cooking this steak. Thanks for watching today. John Woods with All Things Food. Like this channel today. Like this video because it really helps us a lot. If you haven't subscribed, it's free. We bring you recipes like this every week. But this week as you go out, not only remember, love to cook, but cook to love. And I guarantee everyone watching me today can make a steak exactly like this, 5-star quality. Go do it. Tell me about it in the comment section below.